So yeah, this week's topic, software implementations. One of the dullest things you could probably imagine talking about. So I'm going to try and keep it lighthearted and pretty short. But basically what I wanted to do is condense the hundreds of software implementations I've done over my career down into 5 minutes and talk about the three main things you need to look at to make sure your software implementations don't generally end up being disappointing and making you consider a new career and possibly a new life. So as I said, guys, I've probably done hundreds of software implementations over my life, and the ones that are successful often have some similar criteria. And that's really what I want to share with you today. So one of the things I've noticed about the successful projects that I do is often they have a deadline that can't be moved. Either there's a little bit of legislation coming in, or their company's being sold, or their old software is being sunsetted and they can't use it anymore. But whatever the reason is, having that defined deadline actually focuses everyone. And what it means is that the whole project knows that they can't let it slip. And that means that the project itself is going to define its objectives, and those objectives are going to be really tight. So that would be the first bit of advice I'd have to anyone doing a software project. Define your objectives, make them tight, and don't slip from that. So one of the tempting things when you start a software project is to solve every problem for everyone and everything. And that can cause a lot of problems, because what happens is those problems are often there for a reason. And by solving one element of the problem, you're creating another element for somebody else. And then you get into a big argument over which element is the most important. And that's really what's going to blow out your scope of your project and take something that could be done in 3 or 4 months and maybe extend it out to a year or 2 years. So that's why defining your scope and defining what you're trying to achieve is so important. So we keep everyone focused on what we're actually trying to achieve and don't let them get sidetracked by side issues and tangents. At this stage, I want to share with you a story about a very large transport organisation I used to work with in the UK. They started off with a software project that was literally to replace an existing system that wasn't very good and it wasn't really meeting their needs. Now, the scope they had initially was quite well defined, but as that project went along, they decided to start looking at a whole bunch of other things. So they started looking at re-engineering all their processes, reworking the way they did everything. And then suddenly you had a project that wasn't an IT project anymore. It was becoming a change management and people project. And it meant that the people that were on that project weren't probably the best people to actually undertake that. It also complicated it, because anytime they built any of the software, the process would change and they'd have to go and rebuild it. In the end, it took them almost 4.5 years to implement a system which they only ever used for a couple of years before throwing it out and getting a new one. So making sure you stay within that scope that you initially define is vital when you look at your software projects. So the last thing I want to address in this video is decision paralysis. Now that kind of sounds like a scary type of thing, but decision paralysis is just a natural thing that we mentally go through when we're presented with a whole bunch of decisions we have to make. The first 10 or 15 decisions you might be fine with. The next 10 you're starting to feel a little bit on edge, and then you actually get to a point where your brain just says, I've made too many decisions, I can't handle this anymore. Okay, and it kind of shuts down. So look, this happens in software projects. You'll see it the first couple of weeks. People are really confident. Yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do something else. And then you get about 3 or 4 weeks into the project and you literally ask a question and no one can answer it, because they've reached that point where they literally can't handle any more decisions. So the best way to avoid decision paralysis is every decision you make as a project, split it into 1 or 2 categories. The first category is those decisions that as part of the project we need to get right. So this might be things that you can't change once the project has gone live. Okay, small set of decisions there. The second set of decisions you want to make is things that we can change after the project has gone live. Now, those ones are less important because we can change them at some point in the future. You want people to focus on the ones that are important as part of the project, and the ones that we can change in the future, let's let somebody else worry about that in the future. So guys, just to recap, a couple of tips here. 1, you want to define what you're trying to achieve and make sure it's really tight. 2, you don't want to allow that scope to creep out. And 3, you want to split your decisions into things that you need to get right as part of the project and things you can kick down the road and let someone else worry about in the future. Also, guys, what I would say is there's a lot of experts out there that can help you, but making sure you're going to find an expert that's going to keep you on track and keep your organisation honest is really going to help you with your project. Guys, I'm Andrew Chapman. If you like my content, hit the subscribe button. If you've got any questions or comments, put them in the comments. I'll back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for your time and see you next time. What? We're not done? We need to talk about something else? Motivation. Oh yeah, motivation. So guys, one of the other things that you need to look at as part of your software projects is asking yourself an honest question. And that is, what is the motivation of my staff to finish this project on time and on budget? Look, I was a consultant for 15 years and I was actually KPI'd on utilization. So the longer I could make the projects go, the better it was for me. I was actually financially rewarded by making the projects go as long as possible. And I was pretty good at doing that. I knew all the tricks and tricks of getting that project to keep going and going and going. So be honest with yourselves and ask yourselves, what's the motivation of my staff to actually get this project done on time and on budget? And if you don't have an answer, maybe you need to go away and think of one.